For our white and our excellent knights, for the knights of swift running, fair ranging, far seeing, good hunting, sure cunning, for the smells of the dawning, untainted, ere dew has departed, for the rush through the mist, and the quarry blind started, for the cry of our mates, when the sambar has wheeled and is standing at bay, for the risk and the riot of night, for the sleep at the lair-mouth by day. It is met, and we go to fight. Bay, oh bay. Red Dog by Rudyard Kipling. It was after the letting in of the jungle that the pleasantest part of Mowgli's life began. He had the good conscience that comes from paying a just debt, and all the jungle was his friend, for all the jungle was afraid of him. The things that he did and saw and heard when he was wandering from one people to another, with or without his four companions, would make many, many stories, each as long as this one. So you will never be told how he met and escaped from the mad elephant of Mandla, who killed 22 bullocks, drawing 11 carts of coined silver to the government treasury, and scattered the shiny rupees in the dust. How he fought Jacala, the crocodile, all one long night in the marshes of the north, and broke his skinning knife on the brute's back plates. How he found a new and longer knife round the neck of a man who had been killed by a wild boar, and how he tracked that boar and killed him as a fair price for the knife. How he was caught up in the great famine by the moving of the deer, and nearly crushed to death in the swaying hot herds. How he saved Hattie the Silent from being caught in a pit with a stake at the bottom, and how next day he himself fell into a very cunning leopard trap, and how Hattie broke the wild wooden bars to pieces about him. How he milked the wild buffaloes in the swamp, and how... but we must tell one tale at a time. Father and Mother Wolf died, and Mowgli rolled a big boulder against the mouth of the cave, and cried the death song over them. And Baloo grew very old and stiff, and even Bagheera, whose nerves were steel and whose muscles were iron, seemed slower at the kill. Akela turned from gray to milky white with pure age. His ribs stuck out, and he walked as though he had been made of wood, and Mowgli killed for him. But the young wolves, the children of the disbanded Seoni pack, throve and increased, and when there were some 40 of them, masterless, clean-footed 5-year-olds, Akela told them that they ought to gather themselves together and follow the law, and run under one head as befitted the free people. This was not a matter in which Mowgli gave advice, for, as he said, he had eaten sour fruit, and he knew the tree it hung from. But when Phao, son of Phaona, his father was the grey trucker in the days of Akela's headship, fought his way to the leadership of the pack according to the jungle law, and when the old calls and the old songs began to ring under the stars once more, Mowgli came to the Council Rock for memory's sake. If he chose to speak to the pack waited till he had finished, and he sat at Akela's side on the rock above Phao. Those were the days of good hunting and good sleeping. No stranger cared to break into the jungles that belonged to Mowgli's people, and they called to the pack, and the young wolves grew fat and strong, and there were many cubs to bring to the looking over. Mowgli always attended a looking over, for he remembered the night when a black panther brought a naked brown baby into the pack, and the long call, "Look well, O wolves!" made his heart flutter with strange feelings. Otherwise, he would be far away in the jungle, tasting, touching, seeing, and feeling new things. One twilight, when he was trotting leisurely across the ranges to give Akela the half of a buck he had killed, while his 4 wolves were jogging behind him, sparring a little and tumbling one over another for joy of being alive, he heard a cry that he had not heard since the bad days of Shere Khan. It was what they call in the jungle the Fiao, a kind of shriek that the jackal gives when he is hunting behind a tiger, or when there is some killing afoot. If you can imagine a mixture of hate, triumph, fear, and despair, with a kind of leer running through it. You will get some notion of the Phi-Owl that rose and sank and wavered and quavered far away across the Waingunga. The four began to bristle and growl. Mowgli's hand went to his knife, and he too checked as though he had been turned into stone. "There is no striped one would dare kill here," he said at last.
"That is not the cry of the Forerunner," said Grey Brother. "It is some great killing. Listen!"
It broke out again, half sobbing and half chuckling, just as though the jackal had soft human lips. Then Mowgli drew a deep breath and ran to the Council Rock, overtaking on his way hurrying wolves of the pack. Phao and Akela were on the rock together, and below them, every nerve strained, sat the others. The mothers and the cubs were cantering to their lairs, for when the Phi-Owl cries, it is no time for weak things to be abroad. They could hear nothing except the Waingunga gurgling in the dark, and the evening winds among the tree-tops, till suddenly, across the river, a wolf called. It was no wolf of the pack, for those were all at the rock. The note changed to a long, despairing bay, and
"Dole!"
it said,
"Dole! Dole! Dole!"
In a few minutes they heard tired feet on the rocks, and a gaunt, dripping wolf, streaked with red on his flanks, his right forepaw useless, and his jaws white with foam, flung himself into the circle and lay gasping at Mowgli's feet.
"Good hunting."
"Under whose headship?" said Phao gravely.
"A good hunting. Woontolla am I,"
was the answer. He meant that he was a solitary wolf, fending for himself, his mate, and his cubs in some lonely lair. Woontolla means outlier, one who lies out from any pack. When he panted, they could see his heart shake him backwards and forwards.
"What moves?"
said Phao, for that is the question all the jungle asks after the Phi-Owl.
The Dole! The Dole of the Deccan! Red Dog the Killer! They came north from the south, saying the Deccan was empty and killing, out by the way. When this moon was new, there were 4 to me, my mate and 3 cubs. She would teach them to kill on the grass plains, hiding to drive the buck, as we do who are of the open. At midnight, I heard them together full tongue on the trail. At the dawn wind I found them stiff in the grass. 4 free people. 4 when this moon was new. Then sought I my blood right and found the Dole."
"How many?" said Mowgli. The pack growled deep in their throats.
"I do not know. 3 of them will kill no more. But at the last they drove me like the buck. On 3 legs they drove me. Look, free people!"
He thrust out his mangled forefoot, all dark with dried blood. There were cruel bites low down on his side, and his throat was torn and worried. "Eat," said Akela, rising up from the meat Mowgli had brought him. The outlier flung himself on it, famishing.
"This shall be no loss," he said humbly when he had taken off the edge of his hunger. "Give me a little strength, free people, and I will also kill. My lair is empty, that was full when this moon was new. And the blood debt is not all paid."
Phao heard his teeth crack on a haunch bone and grunted approvingly.
"We shall need those jaws," said he.
"Were there cubs with the Dole?"
"Nay, nay. Red hunters all. Grown dogs of their pack. Heavy and strong."
That meant that the Dole, the red hunting dog of the Deccan, was moving to fight, and the wolves knew well that even the tiger will surrender a new kill to the Dole. They drive straight through the jungle, and what they meet they pull down and tear to pieces. Though they are not as big or half as cunning as the wolf, they are very strong and very numerous. The Dole, for instance, do not begin to call themselves a pack till they are 100 strong, whereas 40 wolves make a very fair pack. Mowgli's wanderings had taken him to the edge of the high grassy downs of the Deccan, and he had often seen the fearless Doles sleeping and playing and scratching themselves among the little hollows and tussocks they used for lairs. He despised and hated them, because they did not smell like the free people, because they did not live in caves, and above all, because they had hair between their toes, while he and his friends were clean-footed. But he knew, for Hattie had told him, what a terrible thing a dole-hunting pack was. Hattie himself moves aside from their line, and until they are all killed, or till game is scarce, they go forward killing as they go. Akela knew something of the doles, too. He said to Mowgli quietly,
"It is better to die in the full pack than leaderless and alone. It is good hunting, and my last.
But, as men live, thou hast very many more nights and days, little brother. Go north and lie down, and if any wolf live after the dole has gone by, he shall bring thee word of the fight."
"Ah,"
said Mowgli quite gravely. "Must I go to the marshes and catch little fish and sleep in a tree? Or must I ask help of the Bundalogue and eat nuts while the pack fights below?"
"It is to the death," said Akela.
"Thou hast never met one of the dole, the Red Killer." "Even the striped one. Ooh-ha-ha!" said Mowgli pettingly. "I have killed one striped ape. Listen now. There was a wolf, my father, and there was a wolf, my mother, and there was an old gray wolf, not too wise, he is white now, was my father and my mother. Therefore he raised his voice, I say that when the dole come, and if the dole come, Mowgli and the free people are of one skin for that hunting. And I say, by the bull that bought me, by the bull Bagheera paid for me in the old days, which ye of the pack do not remember, I say that the trees and the river may hear and hold fast if I forget. I say that this is my knife, and it shall be as a tooth to the pack. And I do not think it is so blunt. This is my word which has gone from me."
"Thou dost not know the dole, man with a wolf's tongue," Woontolla cried.
"I look only to clear my blood debt against them, and they have me in many pieces. They move slowly, killing out as they go. But in 2 days a little strength will come back to me, and I will turn again for my blood debt. But for ye, free people, my counsel is that ye go north and eat but little for a while, until the dole are gone. There is no sleep in this hunting." "Hear the outlier," said Mowgli with a laugh. "Free people! We must go north and eat lizards and rats from the bank, lest by chance we meet the dole. He must kill out our hunting grounds, while we lie hid in the north till it please him to give us our own again. He is a dog, and the pup of a dog, red, yellow-bellied, lairless, and haired between every toe. He counts his cubs 6 and 8 in the litter, as though he were a cheek-eye, the little leaping rat. Surely we must run away, free people, and beg leave of the peoples of the north for the offal of dead cattle. Ye know the saying, north are the vermin, south are the lice. We are the jungle. Choose ye, oh choose, it is good hunting. For the pack, for the full pack, for the lair and the litter, for the in-kill and the out-kill, for the mate that drives the doe, and the little cub within the cave. It is met! It is met! It is met! The pack answered with one deep crashing bark that sounded in the night like a tree falling. "It is met!" they cried. "Stay with these," said Mowgli to his 4. "We shall need every tooth. Phao and Akela must make ready the battle. I go to count the dogs."
"It is death!"
Woontolla cried, half rising. "What can such a hairless one do against the red dog? Even the striped one, remember." "Thou art indeed an outlier," Mowgli crawled back. "But we will speak when the doles are dead. Good hunting, all!" He hurried off into the darkness wild with excitement, hardly looking where he set foot, and the natural consequence was that he tripped full length over Kaa's great coils where the python lay watching a deer path near the river. said Kaa angrily.
Is this jungle work to stamp and tramping on do a night's hunting, when the game are moving so well, too?
The fault was mine, said Mowgli, picking himself up. Indeed, I was seeking thee, Flathead. But each time we meet thou art larger and broader by the length of my arm. There is none like thee in the jungle, wise, old, strong, and most beautiful Kaa.
Now whither does this trail lead?
Kaa's voice was gentler.
Not a moon since there was a manling with a knife threw stones in my head and called me bad little tree cat names because I lay asleep in the open.
Ay, and every driven deer to all the winds. And Mowgli was hunting, and the same Flathead was too deaf to hear his whistle and leave the deer roads free, Mowgli answered composedly, sitting down among the painted coils.
Now this same manling comes with soft tickling words to this same Flathead, telling him that he is wise and strong and beautiful. And this same old Flathead believes in coils of place thus, for this same stone-throwing manling, and... Art thou at ease now? Could Bagheera give thee so good a resting place?
Kaa had, as usual, made a sort of soft half-hammock of himself under Mowgli's weight. The boy reached out in the darkness and gathered in the supple cable-like neck till Kaa's head rested on his shoulder, and then he told him all that had happened in the jungle that night.
Wise I may be, said Kaa at the end, but deaf I surely am. Else I should have heard the fial. Small wonder the eaters of grass are uneasy. How many be the dull?
I have not seen yet. I came hot-foot to thee. Thou art older than Hutty. But, oh, Kaa! Here Mowgli wriggled with joy. It will be good hunting. Few of us will see another moon.
Dost thou strike in this? Remember thou art a man, and remember what pack cast thee out. Let the wolf look to the dog. Thou art a man.
Last year's nuts are this year's black earth, said Mowgli. It is true that I am a man, but it is in my stomach that this night I have said that I am a wolf. I called the river and the trees to remember. I am of the free people, Kaa, till the dole has gone by.
Free people, Kaa grunted. Free thieves! And thou hast tied thyself into the death knot for the sake of the memory of the dead wolves. This is no good hunting.
It is my word which I have spoken. The trees know, the river knows. Till the dole have gone by, my word comes not back to me.
That changes all trails. I had thought to take thee away with me to the northern marshes, but the word, even the word of a little, naked, hairless manling, is the word. Now I, Kaa, say...
Think well, Flathead, lest thou tie thyself into the death knot also. I need no word from thee. For well I know...
Be it so, then, said Kaa. I will give no word. But what is in thy stomach to do when the dole come?
They must swim the Waingunga. I thought to meet them with my knife in the shallows, the pack behind me, and so stabbing and thrusting we might turn down stream, or cool their throats a little.
The dole do not turn when their throats are hot, said Kaa. There will be neither manling nor wolf cub when that hunting is done, but only dry bones.
If we die, we die. It will be most good hunting, but my stomach is young, and I have not seen many rains. I am not wise nor strong. Hast thou a better plan, Kaa?
I have seen 100 rains. Ere Hati cast his milk tushes, my trail was big in the dust. By the first egg, I am older than many trees, and I have seen all the jungle has done.
But this is new hunting, said Mowgli. Never before has the dole crossed our trail.
What is, has been. What will be is no more than a forgotten year striking backwards. Be still while I count those my years.
For a long hour Mowgli lay back among the coils, playing with his knife, while Kaa, his head motionless on the ground, thought of all that he had seen and known since the day he came from the egg. The light seemed to go out of his eyes and leave them like stale opals, and now and again he made little stiff passes with his head to the right and left, as though he were hunting in his sleep. Mowgli dozed quietly, for he knew that there is nothing like sleep before hunting, and he was trained to take it at any hour of the day or night. Then he felt Kaa grow bigger and broader below him as the huge python puffed himself out, hissing with the noise of a sword drawn from a steel scabbard.
I have seen all the dead seasons, Kaa said at last, and the great trees and the old elephants and the rocks that were bare and sharp-pointed ere the moss grew. Art thou still alive, manling?
It is only a little after moonrise, said Mowgli. I do not understand.
I am again Kaa. I knew it was but a little time. Now we will go to the river, and I will show thee what is to be done against the dull.
He turned straight as an arrow for the main stream of the Waingunga, plunging in a little above the pool that hid the Peace Rock, Mowgli at his side.
Nay, do not swim. Go swiftly. My back, little brother.
Mowgli tucked his left arm round Kaa's neck, dropped his right close to his body, and straightened his feet. Then Kaa breasted the current as he alone could, and the ripple of the checked water stood up in a frill round Mowgli's neck, and his feet were waved to and fro in the eddy above the python's lashing sides. A mile or so above the Peace Rock, the Waingunga narrows between a gorge of marble rocks, from 80 to 100 feet high, and the current runs like a mill race between and over all manner of ugly stones. But Mowgli did not trouble his head about the water. No water in the world could have given him a moment's fear. He was looking at the gorge on either side and sniffing uneasily, for there was a sweetish, sourish smell in the air, very like the smell of a big ant-hill on a hot day. Instinctively he lowered himself in the water, only raising his head to breathe, and Kaa came to anchor with a double twist of his tail round a sunken rock, holding Mowgli in the hollow of a coil while the water raced by.
"This is the place of death," said the boy. "Why do we come here?"
"They sleep," said Kaa. "Hati will not turn aside for the striped one. Yet Hati and the striped one together turn aside for the dull. And the dull, they say, turns aside for nothing. And yet for whom do the little people of the rocks turn aside? Tell me, Master of the Jungle. Who is the Master of the Jungle?"
"These," Mowgli whispered. "It is the place of death. Let us go."
"Nay, look well, for they are asleep. It is as it was when I was not the link of thy arm."
The split and weather-worn rocks of the gorge of the Waingunga had been used since the beginning of the jungle by the little people of the rocks, the busy, furious, black, wild bees of India. And, as Mowgli knew well, all trails turned off half a mile away from their country. For centuries the little people had hived and swarmed from cleft to cleft and swarmed again, staining the white marble with stale honey, and made their combs tall and deep and black in the dark of the inner caves, and neither man nor beast nor fire nor water had ever touched them. The length of the gorge on both sides was hung as it were with black, shimmery velvet curtains, and Mowgli sank as he looked, for those were the clotted millions of the sleeping bees. There were other lumps and festoons and things like decayed tree trunks studded on the face of the rock, the old combs of past years, or new cities built in the shadow of the windless gorge. And huge masses of spongy, rotten trash had rolled down and stuck among the trees and creepers that clung to the rock face. As he listened, he heard more than once the rustle and slide of a honey-loaded comb turning over or falling away somewhere in the dark galleries. Then a booming of angry wings and the sullen drip, drip, drip of the wasted honey, guttering along till it lipped over some edge in the open and sluggishly trickled down on the twigs. There was a tiny little beach, not 5 feet broad, on one side of the river, and that was piled high with the rubbish of uncounted years. There lay dead bees, drones, sweepings, stale combs, and wings of marauding moths and beetles that had strayed in after honey, all tumbled in smooth piles of the finest black dust. The mere sharp smell of it was enough to frighten anything that had no wings, and knew what the little people were. Kaa moved upstream again till he came to a sandy bar at the head of the gorge.
"Here is this season's kill," said he. "Look."
On the bank lay the skeletons of a couple of young deer and a buffalo. Mowgli could see that no wolf nor jackal had touched the bones, which were laid out naturally.
"They came beyond the line. They did not know," murmured Mowgli, "and the little people killed them. Let us go ere they awake."
"They do not wake till the dawn," said Kaa. "Now I will tell thee. A hunted buck from the south, many, many rains ago, came hither from the south, not knowing the jungle, a pack on his trail. Being made blind by fear, he leaped from above, the pack running by sight, for they were hot and blind on the trail. The sun was high, and the little people were many and very angry. Many, too, were those of the pack who leaped into the wine gunga. But they were dead ere they took the water. Those who did not leap died also in the racks above. But the buck lived."
"How?"
"Because he came first, running for his life, leaping ere the little people were aware. And it was in the river when they gathered to kill. The pack, following, was altogether lost under the weight of the little people, who had been roused by the feet of that buck."
The buck lived," Mowgli repeated slowly.
"At least he did not die then, though none waited his coming down with a strong body to hold him safe against the water, as a certain old, fat, deaf yellow flathead would wait for a manling. Yea, though there were all the dholes of the Deccan on his trail. What is in thy stomach?"
Kaa's head lay on Mowgli's wet shoulder, and his tongue quivered in the boy's ear. There was a long silence before Mowgli whispered,
"It is to pull the very whiskers of death. But, Kaa, thou art indeed the wisest of all the jungle."
"So many have said. Look now. If the dholes follow thee—"
"As surely they will follow. Ho, ho! I have many little thorns under my tongue to prick into their hides."
"If they follow thee hot and blind, looking only at thy shoulders, those who do not die up above will take water either here or lower down, for the little people will rise up and cover them. Now the wine gunga is hungry water, and they will have no car to hold them, but will go down, such as live, to the shallows by the Seoni lairs, and there thy pack may meet them by the throat."
"Ah! Oh! Better cannot tell the rains fall in the dry season. There is now only the little matter of the run and the leap. I will make me known to the dholes, so that they shall follow me very closely."
"Hast thou seen the rocks above thee, from the landward side?"
"Indeed, no. That I had forgotten."
"Go look. It is all rotten ground, cut and full of holes. One of thy clumsy feet set down without seeing would end the hunt. See, I leave thee here, and, for thy sake only, I would carry thy word to the pack, that they may know where to look for the dull. For myself, I am not of one skin with any wolf."
When Kaa disliked an acquaintance, He could be more unpleasant than any of the jungle people, except perhaps Bagheera. He swam downstream, and opposite the rock he came on Phao and Akela listening to the night noises.
"Hush, dogs," he said cheerfully. "The dhole will come downstream. If ye be not afraid, you can kill them in the shallows."
"When come they?" said Phao. "And where is my man-cub?" said Akela.
"They come when they come," said Kaa. "Wait and see. As for thy man-cub, from whom thou hast taken his word, and so laid him open to death, thy man-cub is with me, and if he be not already dead, the fault is none of thine, bleached dog. Wait here for the dhole, and be glad that the man-cub and I strike on thy side."
Kaa flashed upstream again, and moored himself in the middle of the gorge, looking upwards at the line of the cliff. Presently he saw Mowgli's head move against the stars. Then there was a whiz in the air, the keen, clean "shlop" of a body falling feet first. Next minute the boy was at rest again in the loop of Kaa's body. "It is no leap by night," said Mowgli quietly. "I've jumped twice as far for sport. But that is an evil place above. Low bushes and gullies that go down deep, all full of the little people. I've put big stones, one above the other, by the side of the 3 gullies. These I shall throw down with my feet in running, and the little people will rise up behind me angry."
"That is man's cunning," said Kaa. "Thou art wise, but the little people are always angry."
"Nay, at twilight all wings near and far rest for a while. I will play with the dhole at twilight, for the dhole hunts best by day. He follows now Woontola's blood trail."
"Cheel does not leave a dead ox, nor the dhole a blood trail," said Kaa.
"Then I will make him a new blood trail, of his own blood if I can, and give him dirt to eat. Thou wilt stay here, Kaa, till I come with my dholes?"
"Ay, but what if they kill thee in the jungle, or the little people kill thee before thou canst leap down to the river?"
"When tomorrow comes, we will kill tomorrow," said Mowgli, quoting a jungle saying. And again, "When I am dead, it is time to sing the death song. Good hunting, Kaa!" He loosed his arm from the python's neck and went down the gorge like a log in a freshet, paddling towards the far bank, where he found slack water, and laughing aloud from sheer happiness. There was nothing Mowgli liked better than, as he said, to pull the whiskers of death, and make the jungle feel that he was their overlord. He had often, with Baloo's help, robbed bees' nests and single trees, and he knew that the little people disliked the smell of wild garlic. So he gathered a small bundle of it, tied it up with a bark string, and then followed Woontola's blood trail as it ran southerly from the lairs, for some 5 miles, looking at the trees with his head on one side and chuckling as he looked. "Mowgli the frog I have been," said he to himself. "Mowgli the wolf have I said that I am. Now Mowgli the ape must I be before I am Mowgli the buck. At the end I shall be Mowgli the man. Huh!" And he slid his thumb along the 18-inch blade of his knife. Woontola's trail, all rank with dark blood spots, ran under a forest of thick trees that grew close together and stretched away northeastward, gradually growing thinner and thinner to within 2 miles of the Bee Rocks. From the last tree to the low scrub of the Bee Rocks was open country, where there was hardly enough cover to hide a wolf. Mowgli trotted along under the trees, judging distances between branch and branch, occasionally climbing up a trunk and taking a trial leap from one tree to another, till he came to the open ground, which he studied very carefully for an hour. Then he turned, picked up Woontola's trail where he had left it, settled himself in a tree with an outrunning branch some 8 feet from the ground, hung his bunch of garlic in a safe crotch, and sat still, sharpening his knife on the sole of his foot. A little before midday, when the sun was very warm, he heard the patter of feet, and smelt the abominable smell of the dhole pack as they trotted steadily and piteously along Woontola's trail. Seen from above, the red dhole does not look half the size of a wolf, but Mowgli knew how strong his feet and jaws were. He watched the sharp bay head of the leader snuffing along the trail and gave him, "Good hunting!" The brute looked up and his companions halted behind him. Scores and scores of red dogs with low-hung tails, heavy shoulders, weak quarters, and bloody mouths. The dholes are a very silent people as a rule, and they have no manners, even in their own Deccan. Fully 200 must have gathered below him, but he could see the leaders sniffed hungrily on Wuntola's trail and tried to drag the pack forward. That would never do, or they would be at the lairs at broad daylight, and Mowgli meant to hold them under his tree till twilight. "By whose leave do ye come here?" said Mowgli.
"All jungles are our jungle,"
was the reply, and the dhole that gave it bared his white teeth. Mowgli looked down with a smile and imitated perfectly the sharp chitter-chatter of Chi-Kai, the leaping rat of the Deccan, meaning the dholes to understand that he considered them no better than Chi-Kai. The pack closed up round the tree trunk, and the leader bayed savagely, calling Mowgli a tree-ape. For an answer, Mowgli stretched down one naked leg and wiggled his bare toes just above the leader's head. That was enough, and more than enough, to wake the pack to stupid rage. Those who have hair between their toes do not care to be reminded of it. Mowgli caught his foot away as the leader leaped and said sweetly, "Dog, red dog, go back to the Deccan and eat lizards. Go to Chi-Kai, thy brother, dog, red dog. There is hair between every toe." He twiddled his toes a second time.
"Come down ere we starve thee out, hairless ape!"
yelled the pack, and this was exactly what Mowgli wanted. He laid himself down along the branch, his cheek to the bark, his right arm free, and for some 5 minutes he told the pack what he thought and knew about them, their manners, their customs, their mates, and their puppies. There is no speech in the world so rancorous and so stinging as the language the jungle people use to show scorn and contempt. When you come to think of it, you will see this must be so. As Mowgli told Kaa, he had many little thorns under his tongue, and slowly and deliberately he drove the dholes from silence to growls, from growls to yells, and from yells to hoarse slavery ravings. They tried to answer his taunts, but a cub might as well have tried to answer Kaa in a rage. And all the while Mowgli's right hand lay crooked at his side, ready for action. His feet locked round the branch. The big bay leader leaped many times in the air, but Mowgli dared not risk a false blow. At last, made furious beyond natural strength, he bounded up 7 or 8 feet clear of the ground. Then Mowgli's hand shot out like the head of a tree snake, and gripped him by the scruff of his neck, and the branch shook with a jar as his weight fell back, and Mowgli was almost wrenched onto the ground. But he never loosed his grip, and inch by inch he hauled the beast, hanging like a drowned jackal, up on the branch. With his left hand he reached for his knife and cut off the red bushy tail, flinging the dhole back to earth again. That was all he needed. The dhole would not go forward on Wuntola's trail now till they had killed Mowgli, or Mowgli had killed them. He saw them settle down in circles with a quiver of the haunches that meant revenge to the death, and so he climbed to a higher crotch, settled his back comfortably, and went to sleep. After 3 or 4 hours he waked and counted the pack. They were all there, silent, husky, and dry, with eyes of steel. The sun was beginning to sink. In half an hour the little people of the rocks would be ending their labors, and, as you know, the dhole does not fight well in the twilight. "I did not need such faithful watches," said he, standing up on a branch. "But I will remember this. Ye be true dholes, but to my thinking too much of one kind. For that reason I do not give thee the big lizard-eater his tail again. Art thou not pleased, red dog?"
"I myself will tear out thy stomach,"
yelled the leader, biting the foot of the tree. "Nay, but consider, wise rat of the Deccan. There will now be many litters of little tailless red dogs, yea, with raw, red stumps that sting when the sand is hot. Go home, red dog, and cry that an ape has done this. You will not go? Come then with me, and I will make ye very wise." He moved monkey fashion into the next tree, and so on into the next and the next, the pack following with lifted hungry heads. Now and then he would pretend to fall, and the pack would tumble one over the other in their haste to be in at the death. It was a curious sight. The boy with the knife that shone in the low sunlight as it sifted through the upper branches, and the silent pack with their red coats all aflame, huddling and following below. When he came to the last tree, he took the garlic and rubbed himself all over carefully, and the dholes yelled with scorn. "Ape with a wolf's tongue! Dost thou think to cover thy scent?" they said. "We will follow to the death." "Take thy tail," said Mowgli, flinging it back along the course he had taken. The pack naturally rushed back a little when they smelt the blood. "And follow now to the death!" He had slipped down the tree trunk and headed like the wind in bare feet for the bee rocks before the dholes saw what he would do. They gave one deep howl and settled down to the long lobbing canter that can, at last, run down anything that lives. Mowgli knew their pack pace to be much slower than that of the wolves, or he would never have risked a 2-mile run in full sight. They were sure that the boy was theirs at last, and he was sure that he had them to play with as he pleased. All his trouble was to keep them sufficiently hot behind him to prevent them running off too soon. He ran cleanly, evenly, and springingly, the tailless leader not 5 yards behind him, and the pack stringing out over perhaps 1/4 of a mile of ground, crazy and blind with the rage of slaughter. So he kept his distance by ear, reserving his last effort for the rush across the bee rocks. The little people had gone to sleep in the early twilight, for it was not the season of late blossoming flowers. But as Mowgli's first footfalls rang hollow on the hollow ground, he heard a sound as though all the earth were humming. Then he ran as he had never run in his life before, spurned aside 1, 2, 3 of the piles of stones into the dark, sweet-smelling gullies, heard a roar like the roar of the sea in a cave, saw with the tail of his eye the air grow dark behind him, saw the current of the Waingunga far below, and a flat, diamond-shaped head in the water, leaped outward with all his strength, the tailless dhole snapping at his shoulder in mid-air, and dropped feet first into the safety of the river, breathless and triumphant. There was not a sting on his body, for the smell of the garlic had checked the little people for just the few seconds that carried him across the rocks. When he rose, Kaa's coils were steadying him, and things were bounding over the edge of the cliff. Great lumps, it seemed, of clustered bees falling like plummets. And as each lump touched water, the bees flew upward, and the body of a dhole whirled downstream. Overhead, they could hear furious short yells that were drowned in a roar like thunder, the roar of the wings of the little people of the rocks. Some of the dholes, too, had fallen into the gullies that communicated with the underground caves, and there choked, and fought, and snapped among the tumbled honeycombs, and at last, borne up dead on the heaving waves of bees beneath them, shot out of some hole in the river face, to roll over on the black rubbish heaps. There were dholes who had leaped short into the trees on the cliffs, and the bees blotted out their shapes, but the greater number of them, maddened by the stings, had flung themselves into the river, and, as Kaa said, the Waingunga was hungry water. Kaa held Mowgli fast till the boy had recovered his breath.
"We may not stay here," he said. "The little people are roused indeed. Come."
Swimming low and diving as often as he could, Mowgli went down the river with the knife in his hand.
"Slowly, slowly," said Kaa. "One tooth does not kill 100 unless it be a cobra's, and many of the dholes took water swiftly when they saw the little people rise. They are unhurt."
"The more work for my knife, then. Pah! How the little people follow!" Mowgli sank again. The face of the water was blanketed with wild bees buzzing sullenly and stinging all they found.
"Nothing was ever yet lost by silence," said Kaa.
No sting could penetrate his scales.
"And thou hast all the long night for hunting. Hear them howl."
Nearly half the pack had seen the trap their fellows rushed into, and, turning sharp aside, had flung themselves into the water where the gorge broke down in steep banks. Their cries of rage and their threats against the tree-ape who had brought them to their shame mixed with the yells and growls of those who had been punished by the little people. To remain ashore was death, and every dhole knew it. The pack was swept along the current, down and down to the rocks of the Peace Pool, and even there the angry little people followed and forced them to the water again. Mowgli could hear the voice of the tailless leader bidding his people hold on and kill out every wolf in the Seeonee. But he did not waste his time listening. "One kills in the dark behind us," snapped a dhole. "Here is tainted water." Mowgli had dived forward like an otter, twitched a struggling dhole under water before he could open his mouth, and dark, oily rings rose in the peace pool as the body plopped up, turning on its side. The dholes tried to turn, but the current forced them by, and the little people darted at their heads and ears, and they could hear the challenge of the Seoni pack growing louder and deeper in the gathering darkness ahead. Again Mowgli dived, and again a dhole went under and rose dead, and again the clamor broke out at the rear of the pack, some howling that it was the best to go ashore, others calling on their leader to lead them back to the Deccan, and others bidding Mowgli to show himself and be killed.
"They come to the fight with 2 stomachs and many voices," said Kaa. "The rest is with thy brethren below yonder. The little people go back to sleep, and I will turn also. I do not help wolves."
A wolf came running along the bank on 3 legs, leaping up and down, laying his head sideways close to the ground, hunching his back, and breaking a couple of feet into the air, as though he were playing with his cubs. It was Woontolla, the outlier, and he never said a word, but continued his horrible sport beside the dholes. They had been long in the water now, and were swimming laboriously, their coats drenched and heavy, and their bushy tails dragging like sponges, so tired and shaken that they too were silent, watching the pair of blazing eyes that moved abreast of them.
"This is no good hunting,"
said one at last.
"Good hunting,"
said Mowgli as he rose boldly at the brute's side and sent the long knife home behind the shoulder, pushing hard to avoid the dying snap.
"Art thou there, man cub?"
said Woontolla from the bank.
"Ask of the dead, outlier," Mowgli replied. "Have none come downstream? I have filled these dogs' mouths with dirt. I have tricked them in the broad daylight, and their leader lacks his tail. But here be some few for thee still. Whither shall I drive them?" "I will wait," said Woontolla. "The long night is before me, and I shall see well."
Nearer and nearer came the bay of the Seoni wolves.
"For the pack! For the full pack it is met!"
And a bend in the river drove the dholes forward along the sands and shoals opposite the Seoni lairs. Then they saw their mistake. They should have landed half a mile higher up and rushed the wolves on dry ground. Now it was too late. The bank was lined with burning eyes, and except for the horrible fee-owl cry that had never stopped since the sundown, there was no sound in the jungle. It seemed as though Woontolla was fawning on them to come ashore, and "Turn and take hold!" said the leader of the dholes. The entire pack flung themselves at the shore, threshing and squattering through the shoal water, till the face of the Waingunga was all white and torn, and the great ripples went from side to side like bow waves from a boat. Mowgli followed the rush, stabbing and slicing at the dholes, huddled together, rushed up from the river beach in a wave. Then the long fight began, heaving and straining, and splitting, and scattering, and narrowing, and broadening along the red wet sands, and over and between the tangled tree roots, and through and among the bushes, and in and out of the grass clumps, for even now the dholes were 2 to 1. But they met wolves fighting for all that made the pack, and not only the short, deep-chested, white-tusked hunters of the pack, but the wild-eyed lahinis, the she-wolves of the lair, as the saying is, fighting for their litters, with here and there a yearling wolf, his first coat still half woolly, tugging and grappling by their sides. A wolf, you must know, flies at the throat or snaps at the flank, while a dhole by preference bites low. So when the dholes were struggling out of the water and had to raise their heads, the odds were with the wolves. On dry land the wolves suffered, but in the water or on land Mowgli's knife came and went the same. The 4 had worked their way to his aid. Gray Brother crouched between the boy's knees, protected his stomach, while the others guarded his back on either side, or stood over him when the shock of a leaping, yelling dhole who had thrown himself on the steady blade bore him down. For the rest, it was one tangled confusion, a locked and swaying mob that moved from right to left and from left to right along the bank, and also ground round and round slowly on its own center. Here would be a heaving mound, like a water blister in a whirlpool, which would break like a water blister, and throw 4 or 5 mangled dogs, each striving to get back to the center. Here would be a single wolf born by 2 or 3 dholes dragging them forward, and sinking the while. Here a yearling cub would be held up by the pressure round him, though he had been killed early in the fight, while his mother, crazed with dumb rage, rolled over snapping and passing on, and in the middle of the thickest fight, perhaps, one wolf and one dhole, forgetting everything else, would be maneuvering for first hold till they were swept away by a rush of yelling fighters. Once Mowgli passed Akela, a dhole on either flank, and his all but toothless jaws closed over the loins of a third. And once he saw Phao, his teeth set in the throat of a dhole, tugging the unwilling beast forward till the yearlings could finish him. But the bulk of the fight was blind fury and smother in the dark, hit, trip, and tumble, yelp, groan, and worry round him, and behind him, and above him. As the night wore on, the quick giddy-go-round motion increased. The dholes were wearied and afraid to attack the stronger wolves, though they did not dare to run away yet. But Mowgli felt that the end was coming soon, and contented himself with striking to cripple. The yearlings were growing bolder. There was time to breathe, and now the mere flicker of the knife would sometimes turn a dhole aside. "The meat is very near the bone," Gray Brother gasped. He was bleeding from a score of flesh wounds. "But the bone is yet to be cracked," said Mowgli. "Oh! Thus do we do in the jungle." The red blade ran like a flame along the side of a dhole whose hindquarters were hidden by the weight of a clinging wolf. "My kill!" snorted the wolf through his wrinkled nostrils. "Leave him to me!" "Is thy stomach still empty, outlier?" said Mowgli. Woontolla was fearfully punished, but his grip had paralyzed the dhole, who could not turn round and reach him. "By the bull that bought me," Mowgli cried with a bitter laugh, "it is the tailless one!" And indeed it was the big bay-colored leader. "It is not wise to kill cubs and lahinis," Mowgli went on philosophically, wiping the blood out of his eyes, "unless one also kills the lair-father. And it is in my stomach that this lair-father kills thee." A dhole leaped to his leader's aid, but before his teeth had found Woontolla's flank, Mowgli's knife was in his chest, and Gray Brother took what was left. "And thus do we do in the jungle," said Mowgli. Woontolla said not a word, only his jaws were closing and closing on the backbone as life ebbed. The dhole shuddered, his head dropped, and he lay still, and Woontolla dropped above him. "Huh! The blood debt is paid," said Mowgli. "Sing the song, Woontolla." "He hunts no more," said Gray Brother. "And Akela too is silent this long time." "The bone is cracked!" thundered Phao, son of Phaona. "They go! Kill! Kill out, O hunters of the free people!" Dhole after dhole was slinking away from those dark and bloody sands to the river, to the thick jungle, upstream or downstream, as he saw the road clear. "The debt! The debt!" shouted Mowgli. "Pay the debt! They have slain the lone wolf! Let not a dog go!" He was flying to the river, knife in hand, to check any dhole who dared to take water, when from under a mound of 9 dead rose Akela's head and forequarters, and Mowgli dropped on his knees beside the lone wolf. "Said I not it would be my last fight?" Akela gasped. "It is good hunting. And thou, little brother?" "I live, having killed many." "Even so I die, and I would die by thee, little brother." Mowgli took the terrible scarred head on his knees and put his arms round the torn neck. "It is long since the old days of Shere Khan and a man-cub that rolled naked in the dust," coughed Akela. "Nay, nay, I am a wolf! I am of one skin with the free people!" Mowgli cried. "It is no will of mine that I am a man." "Thou art a man, little brother, wolfling of my watching. Thou art all a man, or else the pack had fled before the dhole. My life I owed to thee,
and today thou hast saved the pack, even as once I saved thee. Hast thou forgotten? All debts are paid now. Go to thy own people. I tell thee again, eye of my eye, this hunting is ended. Go to thy own people.
I will never go. I will hunt alone in the jungle. I have said it. After the summer come the rains, and after the rains comes the spring.
Go back before thou art driven.
Who will drive me?
Mowgli will drive Mowgli. Go back to thy people. Go to men.
When Mowgli drives Mowgli, I will go, Mowgli answered.
There is no more for thee, said Akela. Now I would speak to my kind. Little brother, canst thou rise me to my feet? I also am a leader of the free people.
Very carefully and gently, Mowgli raised Akela to his feet, both arms round him, and the lone wolf drew a deep breath and began the death song that the leader of the pack should sing when he dies. It gathered strength as he went on, lifting and ringing far across the river, till it came to the last,
"Good hunting."
And Akela shook himself clear of Mowgli for an instant, and leaping into the air, fell backwards dead upon his last and most terrible kill. Mowgli sat with his head on his knees, careless of anything else, while the last of the dying dholes were being overtaken and run down by the merciless lahinis. Little by little, the cries died away, and the wolves came back limping as their wounds stiffened to take stock of the dead. 15 of the pack, as well as half a dozen lahinis, were dead by the river, and of the others not one was unmarked. Mowgli sat through it all till the cold daybreak, when Feo's red, wet muzzle was dropped in his hand, and Mowgli drew back to show the gaunt body of Akela. "Good hunting," said Feo, as though Akela were still alive, and then over his bitten shoulder to the others, "Howl, dogs! A wolf has died tonight." But of all the pack of 200 fighting dholes, red dogs of the Deccan, whose boast is that no living thing in the jungle dare stand before them, not one returns to the Deccan to carry that news. This is the song that Cheel sang as the kites dropped down one after another to the riverbed, when the great fight was finished. Cheel is good friends with everybody, but he is a cold-blooded kind of creature at heart, because he knows that almost everybody in the jungle comes to him in the long run. "These were my companions going forth by night. Cheel, look you for Cheel. Now come I to whistle at the ending of the fight. Cheel, vanguards of Cheel. Would they gave me over herd of quarry newly slain. Would I gave them underfoot of buck upon the plain. Here's an end of every trail, they shall not speak again. They that gave the hunting cry, they that followed fast. Cheel, look you for Cheel. They that bade the sombre wheel, and pinned him as he passed. Cheel, vanguards of Cheel. They that lagged behind the scent, they that ran before. They that shunned the level horn, they that overbore. Here's an end to every trail, they shall not follow more. These were my companions, pitied was they died. Cheel, look you for Cheel. Now come I to comfort them that knew them in their pride. Cheel, vanguards of Cheel. Tattered flank and sunken eye, open mouth and red, locked and lank and lone they lie, the dead upon their dead. Here's an end of every trail, and here my hosts are fed.